What's up guys, today we're going to be going over linear fusion rifles in Destiny 2 and be going over their DPS numbers, their total damage output, and just trying to determine if they still suck or if they're usable now. And the main one we'll be going over is the new one, Threaded Needle, and we'll first be going over the god roll for it, and then also breaking down a few of the other exotics. Round 2 of GFUEL Madness ends tonight, so if you ever wanted to try out GFUEL or need to stock up on some of your favorites, today is the final push to make it into round 3, and the remaining rounds will all be content based and not code usage, so go crazy if you guys want. If I make it further into the tournament, my code will still be 30% off as long as we're still in it, but making all of your orders now will help us get into that round 3. Anyway, you guys can click the link in the comments and description. It'll take you over to their store. You can check out what they have. Let's go ahead and begin with the video looking at Threaded Needle. The first thing I want to talk about is accelerated coils versus liquid coils to see which one is the better option. Accelerated coils will decrease your damage but increase your rate of fire. Then liquid coils will do the exact opposite. It will increase your damage but reduce your rate of fire. So with liquid coils, it goes up to 41,886. So liquid coils will be a 6.2% increase to your damage. But now looking at the trade-off of the rate of fire, first with accelerated coils, it's going to take shoot off one magazine 4.5 seconds. Now with liquid coils, which will be slower, it's going to take a little bit longer at roughly 4.9 seconds. So accelerated coils is 8.1% quicker. So overall, accelerated coils wins out because of the rate of fire increase is more than what you lose from the damage decrease. So that will result in the highest DPS. Now looking at the perks in the left column, there's gonna be 4 ones I want to talk about: Clown Cartridge, Rapid Hit, Autoloading, and also Field Prep. And all these are gonna be reload based perks. And the first one I want to talk about is Rapid Hit. Obviously, if you have ×5 Rapid Hit, it will give you max reload speed and also give you stability, but stability isn't that important on a linear fusion rifle. So something like Field Prep will also give you max reload speed while crouching. This weapon normally holds 17 ammo, but now with Field Prep, it'll go up to 20. So if you just want pure reload speed, I think Field Prep is the best because it'll give you the max reload speed, but also give you more total damage output. And the one perk I have not got on my account yet is going to be Auto Load and Holster, which is going to be pretty good if you're pairing it with, let's say a sniper or something like Iznagi's Burden. But those combos aren't too important, but it could be useful if you're trying to combo it with something like that. And the final perk will be Clown Cartridge, which is the most interesting. But one thing that is weird about linear fusions is backup mag does nothing to the weapons. So just use major spec or boss spec. But what happens with Clown Cartridge is every single time you reload, it overfills the magazines from the reserves. And the max will be 8 and the minimum will be 6. So the mag will always be 6 every single time you reload at least, and can be 7 or 8. So those are the left column perks. Now looking at the right, there is pretty much only going to be 2 I want to talk about, which are going to be Vorpal and then also Frenzy. You also have things like Demo, but with Clown Cartridge, I don't think that's very worthwhile. Then there's also Multi-Kill Clip, which will be the highest damage buff, but pretty much unrealistic for any fight. So first looking at the damage increase of Vorpal, it's going to take it to 45,337. Now with Frenzy, it's going to be 47,308. So Vorpal is going to be a 15% increase, while Frenzy is going to be 20%. So Frenzy is going to be the highest damage buff you can get for a boss. And the cool thing about Frenzy is it also will give you max reload speed as long as you have the perk procced. Speaking of which, it's pretty easy to have going into most boss fights in the game. So that is going to be just overall the better perk. So now we look at some DPS numbers. 1 magazine, 5 shots. Doesn't matter what your left perk is. It's going to take 4.5 seconds. Meaning 51.5 thousand DPS, which isn't too high, but it also isn't that bad, I guess. And if you're using Clown Cartridge, 1 mag will now be up to 8 shots, so if you need to do more than 5 but less than 9, you still don't need to reload with Clown Cartridge, and that will take 7.7 seconds, meaning DPS barely falls off to 49.2 thousand. So once again, not great, but not too bad, I guess. But now if you need more than 8 shots, no matter what left perk you're using, that means you're going to have to reload at least once. With Clown Cartridge, you can pretty much shoot off the entire reserves of the weapon with just 1 reload if you're lucky, get 8 mag into another 8 mag. And the cool thing about Frenzy, if you pair that with Clown Cartridge, you still have really good reload speed, and that took 16.8 seconds, meaning DPS falls to almost 45,000, which once again isn't too bad, shooting off the entire reserves of the weapon and still barely dipping. And as we showed off, this weapon holds 17 ammo with no reserve perks or anything like that, which means just over 800,000 total damage output, which once again isn't too bad. There is definitely things better though. So overall, the god roll on Threaded Needle is definitely accelerated coils, Clown Cartridge, then also Frenzy. And Frenzy and Clown just work perfectly together because Frenzy gives you the highest damage buff and also reload speed, which means you can take advantage of something like Clown Cartridge and pretty much just always have a bigger magazine. Before we get to our final thoughts on Linear Fusions, let's look at the two exotic heavy ones, starting with Sleeper Simulant. This was an old classic of D1 and was pretty good at D2 at times, but they pretty much nuked the bouncing part of this weapon, so the only way to use it is just go for crits. And looking at the rate of fire of one magazine, it's going to take 3.3 seconds. Then we do 2 magazines with 1 reload. It'll take quite a bit longer. At 8.2 seconds, which means the DPS of 1 mag is 55,000. Then for 2 mags, it falls down to 45,000, which is already lower than pretty much entire reserves of Threaded Needle. So not looking too good. And the total damage output, it holds 11, which means 677,000, which once again is not very good. So Sleeper, not looking too good. And the final exotic heavy will be the Queenbreaker, which at its peak was a must use in Gambit if you guys remember those days. And look at the damage on Carl with it, 29,723. Look at the rate of fire of both the 1 mag and 2 mags at the same time. It's gonna take quite a while for 2 mags. At roughly 8.7 seconds, meaning DPS of 1 mag is 41, and of 2 mags, 34,000. So those numbers are terrible. Even if those numbers were around last season before they increased the base level of the game, those would still be bad. And numbers are even higher this season. So overall, we just talk about the numbers of these linear fusion rifles. The numbers of Thread Needle aren't too bad, to be honest. The 1 mag being in the 51.5 thousand range, then the 2 mags being in the 45,000 range. Those numbers definitely aren't great, like I mentioned during the video. But if we compare it to some other things we tested so far this season, the swords and rockets, which are by far the 2 best things in the game, their burst numbers are like in the upper 80s, maybe lower 90s, but then their sustained DPS numbers are usually in the upper 50s or lower 60s. And something like linear fusion rifles are obviously like sustained DPS weapons. They'll pretty much never be like those burst weapons. So for them to be like meta weapons, their sustained DPS numbers would need to be around 60,000 to at least be usable, in my opinion. Because if you think about it, swords have 60,000 sustained DPS, but also have 90,000 peak burst DPS. So for a linear fusion rifle, which will only be sustained DPS, their sustained DPS needs to be better than the weapons that are also good at burst, if that makes any sense. So for linear fusion rifles to be meta, their sustained DPS needs to be even higher than that of swords or rockets, which are good for burst also, because linears will only be good for sustain, so their sustain needs to be higher than those of the burst weapons. So I think linear fusion rifles need roughly like a 20 to 25% buff to be considered good, but then to be meta, maybe like a 30% buff. But to be honest, they don't feel terrible right now. Like, I was using the Clown Cartridge Frenzy one in Strikes, and it didn't feel too bad, to be honest. I just love the way Frenzy and Clown Cartridge pairs together. I'm just a huge fan of the Frenzy perk. So if they did buff linear fusion rifles in the upcoming season, you know, this Threaded Needles could be extremely good. As you see, it's pretty much already better than the exotics, so, you know, it's pretty good. So if linear fusion rifles ever did become the meta, this one would probably be the best choice in the entire game. So overall, do linear fusion rifles still suck? Right now, I would say they don't suck, but they're definitely not great. But if they got damage buff in a future season, I could easily see these things being meta. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about linear fusion rifles right now. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.
Kill them.